Hi everybody, this is Kurt Gardner for VFXHaiku.com, and it's been way too long since we've done a tutorial here, and so I think it's time I try to get back in the swing of things. And I think I've said that every single tutorial now, so who knows if this will stick. But in any case, I got something new, so we're going to show it to you today. What we're going to look at today is just tracking inside of Adobe After Effects. Something that comes up all the time when I'm working on my little side projects is that you're tracking an object and whatever you happen to be tracking just goes off screen, and so you're not able to track it anymore. And so what do you do in that sort of situation? So basically what I'm going to show you is how you track objects into your scene when the object that you're tracking basically is no longer visible. So let's just jump into Adobe After Effects and start going at this. Alright, so here we are inside of Adobe After Effects. Now I've got this piece of footage here. It's basically this church, and it's sort of like a pan across the church. Now originally what we were going to do with this piece of footage is we were going to have a little guy running across it. This is for the Cannibal 2-player trailer. But this was a piece of footage that we weren't using. But it illustrates this problem perfectly. So it's basically like there's no point on this footage that's available to track throughout the entire range of the footage. So what we need to do is we need to track multiple points along it and then combine all that tracking data into one track that we can use for the shot. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So let's just open up this piece of footage, and I am going to go into the tracker. If that's not available for you, just go under Window, Tracker, and I am going to choose the button up at the top here where it says Track Motion. And once you do that, you get this little tracking dot. And essentially what it's asking you to do is just pick an area that you want to track. And you have to change the size of these two boxes. Now the inner box is essentially the track, sort of like the feature that you want to be tracking. So this needs to be as tight as possible generally to the object that you're looking to track. And the outer box is essentially where it's going to look for that feature on every single frame. So you need to make this big enough so that when your object moves, After Effects is able to find it within the confines of this box. So if it's too small, your track will usually go awry, and if it's too big, your track will take too long, or it just will screw up completely. So this is probably a good size here. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to hit the Track Forward button. And it is going to track, and it is taking a little bit. And it's going to go, and I'm just going to hit stop here as it gets close to the edge of the screen just so I can reposition this so we can actually see what happens when this goes off screen. So as soon as it hits the edge, poof, the track just stops and it just kind of sticks there, and that's no good. Because what we want it to do is we want it to continue this track. But in order to do that, we need to pick a new object and essentially for it to track. So we could pick like one of these guys that are sort of close to the edge here that's close to this object, but they're going to go off screen right away again. So I want to pick something that's going to be on screen for a while, and I think that's going to be this guy up here in the upper right hand corner. So I am just going to take this and I'm going to move it over here, simply like that, and I'm just going to reposition the size of this search box a little bit, just make it a little bit tighter. And that should be good, and then I'm going to hit the Analyze Forward button again, and it's going to keep doing its thing. Just going to hit stop. And it's tracking, and poof, same thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back, and this was the last usable frame, so now I'm going to pick another object. And something you need to be careful of here is you want to make sure that your object, the new objects that you're tracking, are close to being on the same plane as the original object that you were tracking. So essentially I don't want to track like something new that's in the background or something that's in the foreground, because they're going to be moving at a different rate than the thing that you were originally tracking. So ideally you want to be able to track something that's on the same plane or in roughly the same distance as the original object. That's not always possible, but in this case it is. So I'm going to just track the cross on the top of this roof here. And I'm going to hit, oops, I went the wrong way. I'm going to track forward this way here. It doesn't really matter that we overrode a little bit there. Alright, perfect. So now I've got essentially three parts to this track. I've got part 3 here, and I'm just going to put a little layer marker by hitting star right there. And I'm going to go back and just find out where this first frame is, right there. Put a little star. And when I go all the way back to the beginning, there we go. So essentially I got a big chunk, a medium-sized chunk, and a smaller chunk. Now what I'm going to do in order to sort of piece all this together is I'm going to do it with a null object. So the first thing I'm going to do is just actually make a new null, and then I'm going to apply this tracking data to the null. And the way you do that, you hit Edit Target, And then since there's only 2 layers in here, the null is the only thing that's available. So I'm just going to hit OK. And I'm just going to make sure I'm on frame 1 because I just like to do that. And then I'm going to hit apply. And it'll say apply in X and Y. You always hit OK. And boom. So here we go. So now I've essentially got our layer with our null and 3 different sections to this track. So now obviously what I want to do is fix this so it's all one piece of tracking data. So the easiest way to do this is just to do it in chunks. So I'm going to just select my null, hit U to reveal the keyframes, and literally there's a keyframe on every single frame. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide a few things, or actually just move this to the side a bit, make a little bit more room in my timeline. There we go. So I'll actually zoom in on my footage here so I can see what I'm doing. Alright, so now what I need to do is select all of the keyframes that are in the second part of the track. So I'm going to select all these guys there, and I think I need to select this one and this one, and that's them all. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just literally going to manually move these. So I'm going to move all these points, and now what I have to do to seam this up is I kind of have to do this by eye. There's no real perfect way to do this, and it takes some tweaking sometimes. But basically by default the tracker is always going to track the center of the feature that you were tracking. So I'm just going to line this up. I'm just still moving all these keyframes, and I'm going to put that first keyframe right in the middle of that dot. And so if I go to the frame before it, you can see that these are relatively close to being in the same position. And it sort of looks like they maintain that relationship as they go off screen, which is exactly what you want. So now the problem is now when I bring in this other chunk, I have nothing to line it up against, and that is a problem, and basically you just have to hope for the best. So I'm just going to select all these keyframes, zoom in here, make sure I've got them all. I think I do. I think I need this last one here too. There we go. So now I'm going to go all the way over here. I should zoom out, make this easier on myself. Drag all these guys, get it close, now zoom in. Now I have really no idea where this keyframe should go. It could be down here, it could be up here, it could be over here, but I have a good assumption that it's going to be somewhere in this direction. All the keyframes before and after seem to be going this way, so I'm just going to put it like right in the middle there. So this keyframe is kind of like equidistant between the other two. So I think that's going to be okay. And we don't really have any way of testing this until we actually throw something in the scene to track. So let's just do that. And I think something fun to put in this scene would actually be maybe like some snow, because it's always snowing in Winnipeg. So let's add some extra snow in this shot because this was a nice clear day. So let's just do this real quick. Should take 2 seconds or so. I'm just going to make a new solid, make it really, really, really large because I need it to cover the entire area that we're tracking here. And I'm just going to make a quick particle system. Let's go under, make a couple more particles here. Just going to zoom in. I'm going to make this a box emitter, and I am going to make the size massive, like 3000, something like that. Size in Y, make it really thin, and I'm going to add some gravity so these go down, and maybe even add some more particles. Make these things cloudlets. Let's change the size variability on these things a bit and make them a tiny bit smaller because snowflakes aren't that big. And let's make them a little bit more dim. Just select a different color here. And I'm going to move them up. I need to take the emitter position Y, kind of move it up to the top here like that. Now I think that'll cover the whole thing. So what I'm going to do, well actually first I'm going to offset this particle layer here so the particles are already flowing down, and just extend that all the way to the end. Yeah, so now I have particles going across my entire shot, but they actually aren't tracked into the footage. But what's so nice is that I've applied that tracking data to the null. Now what I can do is I can just parent this particle system to the null, and now it'll track into place. So look at that, the snow is actually falling, and it actually looks like it's, I should zoom in here. So it's actually falling, and it looks like it's tracking pretty good. Now the problem being is I'm going to get to the edge of the frame here, and it's going to lose, it's going to basically clip. And I think my, what else is going on here? My size of my emitter isn't large enough, so I'm going to crank this up. Maybe just make it 4,000 as well. Oops, not 400, 4,000. Now to make sure it reaches the end of the frame. So what I'm going to do is I can actually just physically move this over to the side here, and reposition it wherever I want, and it's still going to be tracked into position. So I can move this and just make sure it covers the whole shot, which it does now. Perfect. Alright, so that's in there. So I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm going to turn on motion blur on this too, just to make it feel like it's sitting in the scene a bit more. And I'm just going to do a quick, here I'm going to set this to half resolution, do a quick RAM preview here, and we'll see how good this looks. Now with something like snow, it's a little bit forgiving. If the track is a little bit off and there's a little hitch or two in it, you're probably not going to notice it too much. But what we'll do next, if this looks okay, is we'll track something directly to the church and see how that looks. So this actually looks like it's working perfectly. I got a little hiccup on frame 1 there. I think that's just my footage. Yeah, my footage is a little glitchy in this, so I'm just going to trim those first couple frames so we don't have to worry about that. So now, aside from the fact that we set up this particle system in 2 seconds and it kind of looks a little bit garbagey, I think this is looking alright. I think our track is pretty okay. But let's just test that one. Let's take it one step further. Let's add some text into here. Let's pretend we're going to type a message here. It's like, it snows a lot in Winnipeg. Oops, this font doesn't have capitals here. Winnipeg. There we go. So let's take this. I'm just going to scale it up. Make it really, really big so it kind of sits across this whole thing here. And I'm just going to rotate it just slightly. Something like that. And let's just change the color of this text. Oh, that's a bit too ugly. Yeah, something like that. Let's do that. And okay, so basically now in order to track this in, all I have to do is just attach it to the null again. Now I know I'm going to run into a problem in this because we're only tracking position and we're not doing things like fixing lens distortion or things like that. So I'm going to have to probably do some tweaks to this to make it really work. Now it actually looks like it's sitting in there pretty good, aside from those first few little glitchy frames from the footage. But you can see one thing that's happening. The roof is actually kind of like, it looks straight here, but it's on an angle over here. And since we only tracked position and didn't track rotation on this, that's going to be a little bit funky. So I am just going to do a couple of real rough keyframes here for rotation. Take it here, just rotate it just ever so slightly. That looks okay. Maybe go here, just rotate this a tiny bit. I'm just going to take the position and just move this up so it doesn't intersect with the roof line there. Something like that. And let's see what it looks like over at the side. That's probably okay. Alright, so now I'm going to have to put motion blur on this too, just to make sure it fits in there a bit better. And let's do a RAM preview of this and see what it looks like. Oh, I should put the snow in front of the text because that would look better. There we go. So now I got a floating title over top of this church. Let's see how well that sticks. It seems like it's doing an okay job. And generally where you're going to find a problem is around the hookup points. So right around here and right around here. And to my eye, for a quick 5-minute tutorial here, I think that's looking pretty good. Now you might need to do some tweaking to this if your track jumped around or anything like that, but this is, I think, about 90% of the battle right here. So we've tracked in something that's going across the entire piece of footage and using multiple track points, and I think this is working pretty good. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've covered in there, please just feel free to leave something in the comments, shoot me an email, send me a message on Twitter or whatever. Thanks a lot, and hopefully I'll be seeing you guys more regularly. Bye.